Hello and welcome. I'm Raghav and today we are going to learn how can we do API testing in Testim. This is going to be very easy and very interesting. We will start by introduction. We will see what are the steps and what are the features for API testing and validation in Testim. We will see a step-by-step demo on how can we add API steps and how can we do API testing and validation in Testim, and then we will also learn how can we retrieve and store values from API step, and then we can use these values in any other subsequent steps, and then we will see how can we use parameters in API steps. So I will show you a step-by-step demo. You can do hands-on along with me. So let's get started and let us first see the introduction for API testing in Testim. Now generally when we create our UI tests or when we generate steps for our UI tests, at some places after some steps we may have the need to check something from the backend, from the database, from the server, or maybe do some kind of validations. And in case we have APIs available to do those actions, it will be very handy, very useful and very efficient to use APIs instead of doing all those actions and processes from the UI, because UI is time consuming and it is error prone. So if we have APIs for these actions and processes, it will be very efficient to use these API steps within our UI tests. And in Testim, so if I go to my Testim account, I have already logged in and I am here in the editor. So let's say this is a test. In case you already have some test here, you can save using the save button from here, and then you can go to new test, and then if you click on this or hover over this plus button here, you can see we get this option for Testim predefined steps. And if I go here, we get this section predefined steps, and if I search for API, we have option for validate API and add API action. Now just in case these two actions are showing as disabled or grayed out, make sure that you have a paid plan for Testim, or you can also use a trial, so you will have these two steps. So this is what we can use for API testing: validate API and add API action. So in general, we use API steps or API tests within our UI steps for validation. So whenever we have to validate something, maybe from the backend or from the server, from database, we can use APIs. We can also do data inquiry and check that, okay, after doing some UI steps, if this is the data present, or we can do some kind of a data inquiry and also data retrieval. So maybe for our tests we need some data from the backend, from the database, and if we have APIs available with us, we can use the APIs, get the data, and then store the values and can use it in our subsequent steps. So this will make our tests very efficient, and this is why we use API steps within our UI steps. Now as we have seen in Testim, we have two types of API steps: the add API action, and this we generally use to get the data from an API call, and then we can store the data or maybe values from the response of the data, and then we can use it in any other next steps or any subsequent steps. And we have the validate API, and this we can use for data validation from the backend, from the server, or from the database. Okay, so this is the need for API steps or the features of API validation and API action in Testim. And with this basic knowledge and fundamentals, let us go to the next topic and we will see a step-by-step demo on how can we do API testing with Testim. So step number 1 is we will create a new test and then we will add the API steps. So let's say I'm here, so make sure that you save your existing test in case you see any of the tests here, and then click on new test. So here, in case you have some base URL set for your project, you will see the very first step as the setup step with the base URL. That's okay, you don't have to change anything. Just go here to the plus icon here, hover over here and go to predefined steps, and here search for API and you should find validate API and add API action. Now I will show you both. The contents are same, but let me first go with add API action. So it will ask us to give a name. and then we can also select a folder. Now here, before we add the API step, let us see some APIs that we can use for testing here. And for that, you can use any of your APIs if you have some APIs for testing, or you can use any demo APIs from online. So I can go to this reqres website which has some demo APIs which we can use for testing. So if I go here and scroll down, you can see we have all these APIs: get APIs, post, put, patch, delete. So let's say this is a get API which gives a list of users. Then this is a API that gives the data of a single user. Let me try this. So this is the endpoint, and the complete URL of this API will be this URL reqres.in, and this will be appended. You can also open this in a new tab, go to this URL and open it in a new tab, and you will get the complete URL for this API, and this is the response we will get. So this is get user details, so I will name it get user details. You can name it anything, and now we can make it as a shared step, or we can uncheck it. Now if you make it as a shared step, this step will be available to be used within this test or any other test. So if you want to reuse this step, you can make it as a shared step, and then I'll just keep it as it is, the step folder. In case you want, you can create new folder from here. Okay, so like I had earlier created a folder called API requests to keep all my API requests, but if you want, you can create a new folder from here. So for now I'll just keep it as it is and say create step. So we have created the step and it has gone inside the step. Now here we can add the details of our API and we can create the API request. So here we have done step number 2, and we have also done this step number 3 where we have created the add API action step. Okay, and we have also done step number 4. We have given the name to the step, and then we have already seen what is shared step. Now we are inside the API step, and then now we have to add all the details for our API request. So here we will start by the method, the HTTP method. So it can be get, post, put, delete, patch, etc. So this one is a get request. Okay, this is what we are using. So I will say get and the URL. So I will copy the URL from here and paste it here. Okay, and then you can see we have this request section and response section. We will focus on the request for now, and here for the request we can get some headers. We can send some headers along with our request, and if we have any headers to be sent with the request, we can add the headers here. So it is something like I can say content type. In case I am sending some content or body, or I want to send something with the request, I am saying that the content I am sending with the request is of type let me say application JSON, or I can say something like accept what I want to accept, or the format in which I want to get the response should be application JSON. So based on your APIs you can add this. You can also see a raw format and a key value format here. Then authorization, if your APIs have any authorization like basic where we have username, password, or any token based authorization, you can add it here. In this case we don't need any authorization. And then in case we have a request body, we can add it here. Request body we have to add for post and put APIs. For get we do not need the body, so I will keep it as it is. I will also show you examples of post, put and delete APIs, but for now let us go with this get API. And then we have assertions. In case you want to check anything, if you want to add any assertion, you can add it here like any checks. So I can say I want to check the status code equals to 200. 200 is the successful status code. In case we get a successful response, we will get 200. So that is what I am checking here. We also have option to run additional code on request results. So in case you want to add some more custom assertions, you can create a script here, or in case you want, or if you want to run any code after we get the response, you can add it here. For example, if you want to retrieve something, we can do that, and this we will see later when we see the part on how do we retrieve and store the values from the response. For now I will keep it closed, and this is good. We have added everything, and I can now click on the send button. So I will say send, and I'll say send, and you can see I have got the response. Here you can see now it is on the response section, where we can see the details and parameters of the response. That status is 200, okay, time taken is 3 milliseconds, this is the size. You can also see the request which was sent to the server. So this was the actual request which was sent. Here we can see our headers are here, we don't have any body, and this is our URL. And then we can also download the response from here. We can also download the request from here, or we can copy the request if we have to. And then you can see the request body. So this is our request body, where we get the details of that particular user. So we have got first name, last name, and all these details here, okay. And then you can see all this is here. Now just in case, let us say status code was 200, so the assertion is pass. You can also see the headers and authorization here, and header section. This is for response. If you have to see for request, you have to go to request, okay. Now let us say if I make the assertion as 201 or something else which should fail. If I try to send it now, you can see here I don't see any changes. I don't get any message something was pass or fail, because this will run when we run it from the test. So let me keep it 200 for now, and you can go back to the test and you can see the details. You can see the step is here. And now if I have to run the test, it is grayed out, the test, but the run button is grayed out because we are missing the base URL. So let us just put some base URL here, or I can just put this one, this URL here, okay. And now I can run it. So make sure that you save your test. I will name it as API request demo 1. You can name it anything, okay. Also you can go to the setup step and go to the properties, and here you can see the base URL, the test name, description, and then I will go to the configuration, and in case you want to change the step timeout, I can do it from here. Let me just keep 5000 milliseconds, that is 5 seconds as the step timeout, and that's it. I can save it, okay. Now to run it, I can now go here and I will say run locally, and let's see, this is the first step, which is just going to that URL, and that's fine. It is, the warning is just for the viewport size, and now it is running the API step. So let's see if it passes or fails, and looks like everything is okay. And you can see if I go here, everything is passed. Now you can also see the message here, it has passed. And if I now go double click and go inside this API step, you can see here it says it is pass. So this assertion is pass. Now let me just change the assertion to some different number which should fail, and I want to see what happens when this step fails. I will save and go back to the test. Make sure that you save your test as well, and I will now run again and check. So this is running the first step, which is pass, and now it is running our API step, and let's see what happens now. So we know this should fail, and yes, you can see it has failed. And here if you see, it says API assertion have failed. And if I go inside the step, or if I just go, yes, I am going inside the step, you can see API assertion have failed. And now you can see here expected 201 and found 200, so that is why it has failed. So this is how you can also check the failure. I will just save it for now. I have already changed the session status code equals to 200, and I will go back to my test and save it. Okay, so this is how we can create the API step, and we have already seen how we can add the assertions, and we have seen the section for this particular section, run additional code on request results. This I will tell you in detail in the coming part. So let me go back and show you. This is the one. We will see this when we learn about how do we or let me just show you very quickly. Let's say I have enabled this, and if I say if request let me say, or I will have to say response body. Yes, we have got, you can see we also get this auto suggestion, response body dot. Now from the response, from this response I can get some particular value by giving the path of that particular parameter. Now because this is a JSON, I will have to give the JSON path. Let us say I want to check first name is Janet, so I will say response body dot, and you can see this response starts with data. We have a data tag, and then inside this we have the first name parameter. So I can say data dot first name. Now in case you have a very complex response or a complex JSON or XML, you can always check with online tools. So let's say I copy this response, and you can go to something like JSON Pathfinder, or if you have an XML, you can go for some XML online tools, and here copy your response, and you can see it has passed it. And let us say if I have to get this, I will click here, and you can see it gives me the path. So this means root, we have to start with data dot first name. So this is what I will be using to get this particular value called Janet. So this is what I am doing here. I am saying response body dot data dot first name, and if I say equals Janet, if this is the case, then I will return true. Otherwise I will throw new I will say new error, and I will say, let us say failed name is not Janet. Okay, so this is how I can also add assertions with code, or I can do anything in the code. I can also retrieve some values, so I can do all this. So for now I will save this, and just to make sure everything is fine, I will save and go back to the test, save the test as well, and run this. So it has started execution, and now it will start the API step. So if everything passes, if our session also passes, this should pass our API step as well. It is running now. And okay, some issue, I think it may be some issue with the code. It says error while running the step, failed name is not Janet. That means our code is running, but I think there is some issue. Let me go inside the step and check. So we are checking that the response body dot data dot first name should be equals to Janet, and if this condition passes, it should return true and come out from here. Okay, I think I made the mistake. It should be return true. We have to return it explicitly. Okay, this is fine now. We have to return true, and then it will not go here. Okay, so I'll save it again and go back, save the test and run it again. So It should now run our API step, and it is running. And yes, this time you can see everything is pass, and if I go inside, you can see everything is fine. Let me now also check what happens in case I change this to something else, let's say John. Okay, so this time it go in the else block, it should bypass this return true and should come here and say failed, name is not Janet. So I will now save this and go back, and let's run this now. It is now running our API step, and yes, you can see it failed, and now it is saying error while running the step, name is not Janet. So that means our assertions are working fine, and we have already executed and checked. So this is how we can add API steps in Testim, and we can do API validation or check a API or use APIs for any kind of API action. And if you see the other API step, which is if I go again and go to the API, and this time if I add the validate API step here, and I will say validate API demo and create the step. Now here you can see we have got the same screen. Here also we have the same fields, we have the HTTP methods, here we give the URL, then we have the request header and authorization, and we have the body here, we have option to add the assertion and the additional code. So it is same, it's just that if you want to do API validation we can use this, otherwise if you want to just run an API or retrieve some data, extract some data, we can use the other one. Okay, also here one thing that I think I missed, so when we add assertion from here, that is if I add any of the predefined assertions and also add the additional code here, this additional code will run only after running the assertion. So this is what is mentioned here, assertion will run before additional code when both are there, and in case this assertion fails, this one, then the additional code will not get executed. Okay, so this is something you can note. And let me go back, and this I can just delete, I can just keep this for now. And also let me show you some other APIs like a post API which we use for creating a resource. So get is just for reading or retrieving a resource, post is to create a resource. So this post you can see is for creating a user, and I can create another API step here, and I can say this is, I can say add API action, and I can say this is create user, create step, and here I will change the method to post, and to get the link or the URL I will go here and get the URL. Okay, again if you have any headers or authorization you can add here. This is the demo API, I don't need any of these for now, and this is a post request, so I need the body. So this body is of JSON type, you can see the format is JSON, so I will select JSON from here, and you can see as I select JSON here, it has taken the header content type application JSON. That means it is telling the server, so when the request will be sent, it will say that the content type of this particular request or the body of the request is of type JSON. So you can explicitly add this, or whenever you add a JSON body, this will be taken from here. Okay, so now I will copy this body and add it here. So this is the JSON body where we have name and leader, and that's it. If you want to add assertions you can add it, for example status code. Now in for a successful create request the status code is 201, so I can check that. I will save and run, and you can see I have got the response here. We have the status code here, time and size, we can see the request which was sent, so this was a request sent, and I can download or copy the request from here, I can download the response from here, and everything is fine. So I can save and go back to the test and save. So we have got our create user here. Okay, then We can also add put or update user. So we can use put for updating a resource. We also use patch for updating a resource. We need put. We generally use put if we have to change the entire resource. Here we also give body and the entire resource is changed or updated, but just in case we have to do some minor updates, we can use patch. So this also I can add another step. I will say add API action. I will say update user, and here again I will say put. I'll give the URL here, so you can see this is pointing to a specific user with ID2 because this is the resource which we are updating. And then because this is update, I will need the JSON body as well, which is this one. Here I can say name is John and job I will say is teacher. Okay, I will save and send and check, and you can see I am getting the response here and everything is working fine. So I can go back. So we have update user. I'll also add another API step for, let us say, to delete a user. I will say delete user, and here I'm going to use this delete API, and here you can see in the response we just get the response code. We don't get any body because we have deleted the resource, and the response code is 204 for successful deletion. I will copy the URL. First I will change this method to delete, add the URL, and that's it. I don't have to do anything else. In case your request does not have any headers or authorization, I can just send and check, and yes, you can see I am getting successful deletion here. Okay, so I can save and go back. So we have added a get API request, a post request, a put request, and a delete request. And for this get, let me also correct the script so that it does not fail. Here I will have to check Janet so that this time it should pass. Okay, so now we have got all these different types of API steps. I will run and check everything working fine. So it has done step number 1. Now it will start our get user details. The get user details is pass, and now it is running create user, which is a post API, and create user is also pass, and now it is doing the update user, which is a put API request, and that is also pass, and now it is running the delete user here, and this is also pass. So we have our test completed. Okay, so these are the steps to add the API steps. Now let us see how we can retrieve and store values from our API step. So let's say I will go to the API step. Let us say here from this step where we are getting the user details, I will go inside this step, and here when we run this API we get this response, and let's say from here I want to extract first name value, which is Janet. So what I will do is I will go to the run additional code section. So here I will go to this section, which is run additional code. Here we have already added this was just for assertion, but now we can use this section to store this value. So here we will add the code to get the value from the response. Now it's the same thing that if we are getting if we have a JSON response, we will use JSON path to get to the parameter or the value. If you have XML, you can use the X path. So here we have JSON path. We have already used this particular code to check the response body dot data dot first name is Janet, because in the response we have the data parameter here and then first name here. Okay, now I can say here I can store this value. I can say exports dot first name. This is the variable name that I am using, and I am storing this value. So I can say here, or I can just say here exports, and I can give use any parameter here. Let's say first name equals, and this is what I will store. So this means this whatever is returned here will get stored in the variable first name. So if everything is fine, Janet should be stored in this variable called first name. Okay, and now you can see here this is showing as disabled because this code is not reachable, and for that I have to put this if in a curly bracket, and now it is reachable. Okay, so now this you can put it outside if as also, like I can cut it from here and I can add it here, and I don't need all this if I just have to extract the value and I don't have to do any assertion. But it is good that we are also checking that if we get this, then only we are storing it, otherwise not. So this will check. If it is true, then it will store this whatever first name is in this first name variable and then return true and stop it, and this code will not be there. This code will not get executed, and in case it is false, it will come here and execute this code. Okay, so I will save this. Okay, so don't get confused here. This is not required. This is just to see that we are also checking that we get something here and we get this particular value, but otherwise we can directly use this code to store the value in the variable called first name. Okay, so I have done this and I have saved this. I can go back. Now we can use this variable called first name in any other subsequent step. So just in case, just to check, I can add a JavaScript step and can use this particular code to print the name or print the value on the console. So I can say here, let us say here I will go to testing predefined step, and here I will say add custom action, which is a JavaScript step, and I will say print to console, and here I will say console.log, and I can say first name stored in the earlier stored from the earlier step is, and I will say first name, which was the variable name, and that's it. I will save it and I will go back to the test. I will save the test and let me just run it to check. So step number 1 is done. It is now running our get user details, which will store that particular variable and get its value, and now it is running print to console, and you can see it has printed first name stored from the earliest step is Janet. That means we are able to store and retrieve that particular value. I'm just going to stop it from now. Okay, now here we can also use this extracted value in any other subsequent APIs as well. So for example, if I go to this, let's say I go to this create user, and here if I go to this request, and let's say instead of this hard-coded value which is Morpheus, I want to use my variable value, or I want to refer the variable which I have stored in the earlier step, which is first name. I can do that by giving double curly brackets or triple curly brackets, and within this I will use the variable name or the parameter name, which is first name. Okay, I can save this, and now I will go back and save the test, and let's see what happens this time. I am running it again. So it has extracted the value, and we can see it has printed this on the console, and now it is running the create user. So let us see if this passes. So the step is passed, and if I go inside the step and see, you can now see it has referred Janet, and that is why in the response we are getting Janet. So in the request we are referring first name, and then in the response in the first name variable the value was Janet, and therefore we are getting this. Now if I try to run this from here, from the API step itself, here you can see I am not getting anything, because this will get this first name parameter or variable will be referred and will have the value only when we run the complete test. So this is how you can use it. Okay, so this is how we can retrieve some value from an API step, from the response, store it and use in any of the subsequent steps. So we can use it through code like this, or we can refer it by giving double or triple curly brackets. Okay, and the same thing applies for parameters, and that is what we are going to learn next. How do we create and use parameters in API steps? So here, wherever you want to use the parameters, you can go to the properties of the API step. So let's say I will go to this update user, and I can click on this icon to show the properties of this step, and here you can see we have the option for parameters. Okay, if I go inside this API, so here we don't have any parameters as of now, and you can use the parameters, you can create parameters and use it in the URL, we can use it in the headers, we can use it in the body, we can also use it in assertions or in the additional code as well. So let's say this name John or job teacher, I want to take it from the parameter. So I will go back and go to the properties of this step, and these are the steps we will create the parameters as needed. So I will go here, and in the parameter section I will click plus, and you can create JS parameters or HTML. I will say JS or JavaScript. This is the parameter name, you can edit it using this edit icon. So I will say, you can give it anything, any name here. I am saying name, and let us say I will say name is Albert, and I will add one more parameter. I will say job, and job is scientist. Okay, so we have created two parameters here, name and job. I will save it and go inside the API step, and here let me see if I should see the parameters here. So let me just confirm, this is where I created the parameters in this API request. Yes, name and job. So I will go inside, and let us say in place of this name hard-coded value, I will say within this is in the request, here I will say name. So I have to give double curly brackets or triple curly brackets and use the parameter name. Similarly here I will say job, and I will save it. And you can also see here the parameters for this step are now displayed here. So we have two parameters, name and job. In this step I can click on edit, and it will show me the parameters here. So you can see the parameters are here. Okay, so I can use this. I can also add parameters in the headers, or I can also add in the assertions as well. So let's say I also add one more parameter. I will say parameter, and I will call it as status code, and I will say 200. Okay, and this I can also now use here. So you can see now we have got status code as well. And let's say in the assertion I will say status code equals, I can directly use the name of the parameter. So here I can directly use the name of the parameter. In the, if I have to refer the parameter in the script here in the additional code, then also I can directly use the name of the parameter. But if I have to use it here in the response body or in the headers or in the URL, then I will have to put them within double or triple curly brackets. So let me now run and check. If I say send, now this time you can see it has not referred anything, because this will run only when we run it from the test. So let us save this and come out, go to the test, save the test, and I will run the test now. So let's see. So it is now running get user details, and it has extracted the value. It is now running create user. Create user is successful, and now it is running the update user API step. So we will check if this runs fine. And some issue, it says reference error, Albert is not defined. So it is able to refer it, but says it is not defined. For that we will go inside and check. So it is saying Albert is not defined. Okay, let me check this, because this should this syntax have already worked in our earlier create user step. So for now I'll just change it back to the original, which is this, and to check the parameters I will go back to, let us say, create user API, and here also we have name and job. So let's just say here in this API create user, I will go to the parameters here and create a parameter called job. So I will name it as job, and here I will make the job as teacher. So we have got this here parameter. We have got the parameter here, and I will go now inside the API step, and now here in the request, in the job, I am going to refer the parameter. So I will say the value of the job I am getting from the parameter called job, which is teacher. Okay, also okay, let me just first check this. I am saving this, and I will go back to the test. This has saved the test, so I will now run and check. So get user details is successful. It has also printed to the console, and now it is running the create user API, and let's just check. Okay, here also it is showing me some error while referring the parameter. Okay, I believe the issue is it should be passed as a string. So I think I will have to make this as a string. So I will put this within this double quotes, this value of the parameter, and let me now check. I think this double brackets is fine. I can also put triple curly brackets, and now you can see I have put this within double quotes. So I will go and run this again, and this time let me check again. So it has run the first step, Now it is running get user details. It has printed to the console, and now it is running the create user step, and yes, now it is passed. So I think that was the issue, and this is now pass. And if I go and check the response, you can see in the job, in the response we are getting teacher. So this is now working fine. This is how you can refer the parameters. Also in this particular API update user, this is running now, and here of course we know the issue, so I can fix this now. I will have to go and fix this. Also we can see here we have also referred status code, which is working fine. I can go and check this update user. I can fix this here, and if I refer it now, it should work fine. So if I go and check, status code is 200, which is fine. If I go and refer this here, name and job, and we have status code referred here in the session. I will save, and now I will run and check. It has executed create user and now update user, and now it is fine. You can see everything is fine. So our parameters and referencing of the parameters is now working fine. Also in the response we are getting name Albert, job scientist, and this assertion is also working fine, which we were referring from the parameter status code. Okay, so this is all working fine. So this is how we can use parameters, and these are the syntaxes. If we have to refer the parameter in the request URL, for example, if you go to the URL and you can also refer any parameter here, in that case you will use this syntax, that is you can use double or triple brackets and give the parameter name. If you are referring a parameter in the header, again we can use double or triple brackets and give the parameter name. In the body we have already seen we can use double or triple brackets, and if we have to use in assertion we can directly give the parameter name, and we have seen this. Also if you use any parameter or refer any parameter in the function editor, we can directly use the parameter name, and we have already checked this. So this is how we can use parameter, and this is how we can do API testing and add API steps for validation or data retrieval in Testim. I hope this was very useful for you. I will see you in the next session. Thank you for watching, and never stop learning.